Hello and welcome to the Here We Grow Show, a show specifically designed to bring together community leaders making a difference and share financial strategies so you can plan for and live the retirement lifestyle you've always dreamed. Your host is Amazon bestselling author, president, and founder of Foguth Financial Group, Michael Foguth.
Hi, I'm Michael Foguth. I believe in educating you about information that matters to you and your retirement. Join me this week and every week as we welcome today's leaders in our community, as well as experts in the field of finance and retirement to discuss topics that matter to you today. These discussions can help you make better financial decisions so you can plan for and live the retirement of your dreams. Folks, well, welcome back to the Here We Grow radio show. Again, I am your host, Michael Foguth of Foguth Financial Group, and this is my favorite part of the show. This is the part where, again, we're going to bring on somebody to share with you what's going on in our community right here in Livingston County. Sometimes it's local, sometimes it's national. In this case, it is an opportunity that we have, and we've had discussions about this leading up to this, and really our guest today is going to be very, very important, not only to our community, but to those in our community in the time of winter coming up and things that are getting ready to happen and really throughout the entire year. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Diane Duncan with the Severe Weather Network. And Diane, thank you so much, because I'm telling you, this is just I know we've talked on the show before, but I wanted to bring you guys back on because it's so important that people in our area in Livingston County understand that there are resources out there for emergency overnight shelters and really for homeless adults. And really this is for the winter months. And again, as much as we may hate to admit it, it's getting ready to get really, really cold here in Michigan, right? So if you can maybe give our listeners out there a background of exactly what the Severe Weather Network is and what it does for Livingston County.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak on behalf of the Severe Weather Network, Livingston County. So the Severe Weather Network started actually as a steering committee back in 2014. It was a collaborative effort between local churches, the Oakland Livingston Human Services Agency, Love Inc., and the Salvation Army. And it was started and created because our county has never had a homeless shelter of any kind. And so what happened is typically the sheltering was done through service agencies. So back in the 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, late 90s, we had the REACH program, which was operated by the Salvation Army. And that was a transitional shelter that went from church to church. So there were churches that housed the guests and other churches that provided volunteers. Well, that funding went away in 2011. And so for a few years, the only opportunity for sheltering and the only sheltering available was done through motel vouchers through service agencies, the Salvation Army and Oakland Livingston Human Services Agency. The funding was very limited. So typically by the end of October, the funding was gone. And so there were, all through those winter months, there was no funding available to provide to anybody that was homeless. So the Severe Weather Network Steering Committee was created, and then the Severe Weather Network was formed. It was modeled after a program that Love Inc. did out in Boulder, Colorado. So it was Love Inc. is a national organization, yes. And this program was out in Boulder. So that's how we started. The two pastors that were instrumental in creating this were Chad Gibbons of Centerpoint Church in Howell and DJ Reed of Chilson Baptist Church here in Brighton, or in Howell, actually, right on Brighton Road there. So for the first 3 years of that particular ministry or mission, we did a transitional type of sheltering, typical to the REACH program. But what we found during that time was that the guests really had a hard time with the transition from church to church. There were different policies that were in place and so forth. And we operated less months out of the year. So we had to kind of squeeze our schedule into between Advent or after Advent and before Lent. So because the churches needed their space.
Yes.
That was another thing. We realized, Michigan, our winters last sometimes into April, early May, and they start earlier, right? So they start in November. So we really worked hard to try to figure a plan out where we could indeed have a season that would start December 1st through April 30th. So one of the things that the steering committee wanted to do was form a nonprofit, because we felt like if we were a nonprofit, we could start applying for grant funding. We could start receiving, larger donations and so forth from the community and from local businesses and so forth. So we formed a nonprofit back in 2016, and we have been a nonprofit since that time. What that allowed us to do is get funding from the United Way, from companies, and from donors, family donors, community donors. And we were able to extend our length of time, our length of season, and we were able to lease a permanent facility. And so we have been operating out of the Chilson Hills Baptist Church for the last few years, last few seasons. Our season would start December 1st and end April 15th. So because of COVID, we've had some major changes, right? I mean, we've had to really do some serious planning. Our board has met every week since March 17th.
Wow.
In order to plan for this upcoming season. We've been working very, very hard, trying to come up with a safe alternative to what we were doing previously. So for the last 2 years, just to give you an idea of what we had over the last 2 years, homeless numbers wise, we have served 67 adult men and women over the last 2 years, and we've provided 2,275 shelter nights. So keep in.
I want to ask a question on that, because I think that's important that the listeners understand. Again, let's go back to what you said at the beginning. Livingston County does not have a homeless shelter, right? And again, I know we've chatted about this before, but it's so important that we don't overlook that, because there are a lot of communities and counties that have these resources for people, right? And, I hate to say, we were talking about Brighton churches and Howell churches, and you're driving down Grand River, or, you're driving under the viaducts. You're not, I guess from a stereotypical point of view of, there's not, out in LA, there's tent city, and it's not maybe that visual to the common listener out there right now of saying, okay, well, I don't see anybody homeless out here, so there's probably not anybody, right? Let's not jump to that conclusion. You just said there's over 67 people in the last couple of years that you've been able to help, over 2,000 nights that you've provided for these people. So there is a demand or a need for it. And quite frankly, it's like anything in life. It's, I'm drinking a coffee here. Look, if I need a coffee, there's 500 places to get coffee down the road, right? Mm-hmm. If you need that shelter, there is nowhere right now that's providing it prior to you guys. So I think that's ultra important that we kind of highlight that area. And then to kind of piggyback off of that, COVID's messed with everything, right? I mean, everything from, use my coffee analogy, from how you get a cup of coffee to how you drink your coffee. So I can only imagine, using the Chilson Hills and having people come in and stay, and people coming in and out of that. What does that, I guess, look like getting ready to come in? Because again, you guys open the doors on December the 1st, right? What's that going to look like?
Okay, so let me go back for just a minute and just clarify a couple things. So right now, currently, when the Severe Weather Network is not in operation, there actually are alternative options for people to seek sheltering here in the county, and that is through your local service agencies. So the Oakland Livingston Human Services Agency, otherwise known as OLSA, the Salvation Army. Both those two organizations received CARES Act funding, a significant amount of CARES Act funding. So they do have funding available for sheltering and also for rapid rehousing. So there was an increase in the funding for these particular initiatives.
And so for everybody out there listening, the CARES Act was the bill or the law that was passed as, the stimulus package, if you will, at the beginning of the summer. So everybody, CARES Act, and yes, there was a lot of money that was put into those agencies. So very good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure. So those two agencies, and then St. Vincent de Paul is another agency. They're a nonprofit as well that people can reach out to them, and if they have funds available, they may be able to utilize those for sheltering as well.
Okay.
So there is something available. The difference here is this year. The difference from last year to this year is because in years past the funding was typically gone by October or November, right?
Right.
This year we expect that CARES Act funding for those agencies to still be there. But we are expecting a significant increase in the homeless this year because of the COVID, unemployment, the evictions that are going to be coming around the corner here. I mean, we've already seen it. So our our hotline, like our phone I've taken 5 calls in the last 2 weeks requesting um, um, shelter, and it's usually been after hours.
Okay.
So yeah, so it is difficult for people to get a 24-hour hotline. Like there's no 24-hour hotline right now for emergency sheltering. When we open, our hotline will be operated 24 hours.
Okay.
But that's the one piece that's a little difficult right now for people that are calling after OLSA has closed or the Salvation Army has closed or that type of thing.
Well, and I think that that's so important, right? So, folks, look, don't go anywhere. We're going to come right back. We're going to be talking with Diane from the Severe Weather Network about the resources, about how really, and again, you're going to want to come back and listen to this because this is a shift and change of how things are going to be operating with funding, with COVID and people needing assistance. Because you brought up a great point that, again, I don't want to overlook this, but we talked about the health impacts of COVID a little bit, but there's a huge financial impact that COVID has brought, and you being a resource in the community, that's going to be kind of a little bit more pressed, if you will. And then at the same time, the housing situation. I mean, it's in my financial opinion, I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg of this financial situation, or of the housing financial situation, and things have really been artificially pushed down with interest rates being so low that when they come back to reality, it's going to, be a bear of, I hate to say bad news, but I think there's a lot of things we got to be on the lookout for. So folks, don't go anywhere. We're going to come back and get really deep into some of those topics. So we'll be right back on the Here We Grow radio show.
When times get tough, who do you have on your team? At Focus Financial Group, we win.
We win.
We win.
We win.
We win by helping you.
By helping you.
By helping you. By helping you.
We win by helping you achieve the retirement you've always dreamed of. Clients who work with Focus Financial Group know they are backed by a solid, experienced, and winning team. It's time to choose your team. Choose the team from Focus Financial Group.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for sticking with us on the Here We Go radio show. For those of you just tuning in, we are with Diane Duncan of the Severe Weather Network. And again, she is the chairperson for the Severe Weather Network here in Livingston County. And again, I'm going to paraphrase, if you will. They are, I want to say that, the homeless shelter for Livingston County, even though we don't technically have one, but you guys are that resource. And a lot of the changes we were talking about before the break that have taken place, I mean, you and your team are meeting just like, in the financial world, I was kind of, thinking to myself, like, yeah, we're doing this. We are meeting more frequently than we ever have before in the financial world because of everything since March has happened in the markets and in the COVID. And you guys are having to do the same thing with your business, if you will, because we have a plan today, but guess what happens? A week from now, everything changes. And a lot of our past guests, they've said the same things. Like, we have this plan in place and then all of a sudden scrap that plan. This now has to be changed. So let's kind of elaborate on that. Right before the break, we were talking about what that looks like during COVID when you guys get ready to open your doors on December the 1st. What's that going to look like for you?
Okay, so it's funny you brought the change and that type of thing. So as I mentioned, we've been meeting weekly since March 17th to try to come up with a safe plan. We had a safe plan in place that to run the shelter out of Chilson, which is where we've been operating out of for the last 3 or 4 years. And we had the health department out. We had a reopening plan. We had everything ready to go. And so in July, we thought, all right, we're good. We're set. Well, then we found out that if we had a COVID symptomatic person or somebody presenting with presenting with symptoms,
sure,
we couldn't keep them there because we didn't have an additional bathroom to quarantine in. So we were going to rely on motels to take them. Well, the motels in the area will not take a COVID positive person.
Wow.
So then we reached out to other counties to see how they were doing this with their shelters, and their counties had their health departments put into place these individual quarantine sites. Well, our county doesn't have individual quarantine sites. So when we got together with the health department and the city manager, Therese Cremont, we had a meeting, and both of them highly recommended that we not operate as a congregate shelter. And so then we went back to the drawing board. All right, how are we going to do this? Because there's going to be such a need. So what we ended up doing, and this is the plan, this is official, we are announcing it actually, this is the first time people will hear about it, is on your show, because we literally just signed yesterday. We have gone into a contract with a local hotel that will provide sheltering for our guests for the season. So from December 1st through April 30th. And the issue with that, though, is this is going to require some significant funding because this is much more than what we would be paying as a lease. So right now we are really reaching out to the community and will be over the next months, requesting funding and hopeful that we can raise up to $75,000, because what we'd like to do is to have 10 shelter night or 10 hotel rooms per night from December 1st through April 30th available for guests that need that. And the reason we're limiting it to 10 right now is because we have a staff coordinator. Her name is Pamela Mitchell. She's fabulous. One of the things that the Severe Weather Network does as well is, we connect with our guests. That's one of the things that's going to be so difficult because we're not going to have the ability for all the board members to be there and people to be interacting with them in a congregate setting. So Pam will be really working with each and every guest to connect them with the service agencies that are provided. And be certain that they're taking the initiatives that they need to in order to transition out of this homelessness into some sustainable housing. So we've decided as a board, our goal is to be able to shelter 10 people per night, 10 hotel rooms for the entire season. And if we were to get an abundant amount of donations, then we would hire an additional person and increase the numbers. So we were very fortunate for this hotel to.
That's exciting news because, again, it's, I love the fact, and again, we've done a lot of work with Love Inc. and a lot of the other agencies that you've talked about. We've done tremendous Livingston United Way. And, the thing that I love about each and every one of these organizations, including your own, with what you've just said, it's not, and this isn't that, I don't want this to be taken as a negative. It's not just a warm bed for the night, right? This is, okay, there's a reason that we're here. A lot of times it's outside of somebody's control, right? Right, wrong, and different. When there's no judgment. That's the other thing I love, right? But okay, so now that we're here, how do we take steps and resources that are available to all of us to make sure that a year from now, we're not in the same predicament? And I think that that's huge because it's just such a strong foundation of somebody was in a bad time, a bad place outside of their control, but your organization, Love Inc., all the other ones that are in this community are going to wrap our arms around and say, okay, we're going to pray, we're going to figure out what's going on, and then we're going to look at our resources, figure out what your unique ability is, and let's get you back on your feet rather than just staying here for the entire season. Then we'll see you next year. No, let's build this foundation. And again, it probably can't happen for everybody, but I know that you guys just do a phenomenal job in that. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to put you on the spot. And again, never use any names. I know this wasn't part of our questions, but I love this because I think that this is what really, really speaks to people in volumes. And I know we've done this on the show before, but share a story with everybody right now. Obviously, we never want to use names, but a story where somebody came in, and again, we're talking about adults, and I know we've talked about all those other things. And again, we just talked, we barely scratched the surface, folks out there that are listening right now, of the impact that the Severe Weather Network has in our community, because there are so many other things that it go about of, and again, little things that, again, I'm not thinking about, but I know you guys are. When you're at Chilson Hills and the amount of restrooms that you have and the beds and the families versus the adults, and just, plethora of, I don't want to call them issues, but things that you guys have to abide by. Give that story out there for somebody listening right now that says, you know what, this person came to us, they saw us, circumstance was tough, but this is what I end up coming from because of what you guys were able to provide.
Okay, so I could provide many, but the one that really is still very, very near and dear to us as a board and to Pam, our coordinator, is last season we had a couple that came to us, and they'd been evicted from their home, and their kids had been taken away from them. So their kids were in foster care. So they came to us, and both were working 2 jobs. They were doing everything they could possibly do to get themselves back on their feet and be able to get their kids back. And so it seemed like there was just one barrier after another for them in this process. We were able to help them in many different ways. First of all, from from a funding standpoint, so the funds that are donated to the Severe Weather Network, we utilize for a number of things, for rental deposits for people that are fortunate to find a place to live, car repairs, insurance for their cars, transportation to and from medical appointments, service agency appointments, and so forth. So with this particular couple, they got pulled over coming back from work, and their license or their tags had expired. Their insurance was not paid up. They impounded the car. And so this was like the biggest barrier they had while they were with us. Well, we were able to get their car out of being impounded. We were able to pay their insurance for them. They were both able to keep their jobs because they had the transportation. They were able to find housing. We were able to set them up with furniture, and they got their kids back. They got their kids back this summer.
That's the best part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely have success stories. We've had 13 people go into housing that have been under our program over the last few years. But it's not like they're finding this on their own. These people, because it's so challenging to navigate this system, right? We have been able to advocate for them, and we've been able to help them navigate it. And that's what's unique about the Severe Weather Network. In addition to just the emergency sheltering, there is a whole nother piece that we do for these people.
Absolutely. And I think that's so true. That's why I love chatting with you about that, because it's like in our job, right? In the financial world, there's thousands of resources out there. There's thousands of different ways of doing things. But if you don't have the educational piece behind of what to do, somebody coming into this and they're like, again, in the circumstances where they're coming to you, the odds are they've never done this before, right? The people that you're just talking about, say they've probably never had their children taken from them. You don't know what to do. It's just like you feel like you're backed into a corner, and you're like, you just want to fight everything you have, but sometimes you don't know what to do. Yep. So I have to applaud you guys for the work that you're doing over there. Keep it up. I know that this is going to be a challenging year, but it sounds like that's no big deal to you guys. I mean, I know it's not easy. I don't want to downplay that. You guys, weekly meetings, I mean, that's phenomenal. And I thank you for that. Thank you for being a resource to our community and all that you do. And every time I know we'll talk to you again next year, there's going to be another success story because of all the hard work that everybody's putting in over there. So thank you so much for that. Continue the great work, and anything you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up the show here today.
Well, I think just one more thing. So November is Homeless Awareness Month here in Livingston County. It's actually everywhere. It's a national awareness month for homelessness. And there's some, the theme this year from the Homeless Continuum of Care is to be informed, to advocate, to donate, and to be the keys of change. And so to be informed means personally open your eyes out there in our community. Homelessness does not look here like it does in Pontiac or Detroit.
Yes.
Look in the parking lots of your 24-hour stores, in the cars. Look in your park and rides. If the libraries are open, go into your libraries. They're in our libraries. Take a look around, open up your eyes, advocate for a permanent shelter here in our county. We need it. We've never needed it more than this pandemic, right?
Yes.
And then donate your time if there's volunteer opportunities. There will be volunteer opunities to cook for the Severe Weather Network this season.
How do they find out about those?
So they can go onto our website at livingston.swn.org.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think that's huge, right? Because there's two ways you give back. And I tell this to my clients, I tell it to everybody. You give back with your time, you give back with your money. You can do both. No one's going to say you can't do both, right? But I think that now it's a great opportunity where, I know it's crazy to talk about, but that season's coming where it's going to get cold and there's going to be opportunity. And I feel like people's hearts start to really open up. And this year, it's no different. If anything, it's magnified this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
Thank you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate your time. And thank you to everybody at the Bogut family there for everything you do for us. We really appreciate it, and for our community.
Thank you. Be well. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Here We Grow Show. To learn more about how we can help you and to get access to the resources mentioned on today's show, visit herewegrowshow.com. Also, don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. Your reviews are the ways we reach more and more people each and every week. If you found today's episode helpful, you can bet there are others out there that would benefit from listening. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. Be sure to subscribe to easily access future and past episodes. Make sure to tune in next week for another great episode of the Here We Grow Show.
Investment advisory services offered through Personal Capital Management LLC, BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM and Focus Financial are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BCM but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents.